You know, you can't really go out and try to tell people to do things. It doesn't really work, you know, because immediately their egos are confronted and their personalities and stuff like that. But if you live that way, because it is a comfortable way for you to live, then that's an example.
Necessity is still the mother of invention, and if we start really needing energy, we'll get it. We have solar, we've got water, we've got all kind of things that we can use, and eventually, if the circumstances get serious enough, which I really believe they will in the next few years, then I think people will start realizing that there are alternative energies, and you don't have to go around the world starting wars over oil. I was in the Air Force a while, and they had what they called policing the area. And that's where you looked around, and if there's anything wrong here or there, anywhere, where you took care of your own area. If everyone just takes care of their own area, then we won't have any problems.
But it's not just policing your own area, because that can turn into its own ego trip. Look at me, I'm doing something in the environment, rather than saying it's something I have to do because it's necessary. I think we got to stop being so prideful about the fact that we're doing something that the world needs. It's not a matter of pride, it's a matter of a dire necessity.
Very most important thing that we can do to try and get out of the mess that we've made on this planet, both social and environmental, is to spend a little bit of time learning and thinking about the consequences of the choices we make each day. Did it affect the environment adversely or animal welfare? Is it good for human health? What do we wear? Where was it made? Did it involve child slave labor or sweatshops? What do we eat? How was it grown? Where did it come from?
For most kids now, a chicken is rectangular, it's got plastic on top, and it doesn't have eye and no feet. What is the scariest, I believe, is that a child will decide on his meal according to the color of the box or the label or whatever advertisement can do for a child. You know, so this is scary. It's scary because you should never eat something you cannot recognize to start with.
If you're going to dig a hole and use that pile of dirt for something over here, you got to fill that hole up with something else. Sure, there are people who are digging holes everywhere and ignoring it, and they're wondering why they're getting bad luck all over the place, because they're not paying respect back to Mother Nature and Father Time.
Carbon-producing manufacturing methods, petroleum-based products shouldn't be used, and that's why all the time we're looking for how can we make products out of bamboo, which grows and grows. Designers are servants of the community.
If you go into a gray concrete box with one little window, it's claustrophobic. It's cold. If you put a skylight on it and you make the window bigger and put a tree outside and put wood on the floor, it gets better.
The biggest change over the 50 years that I've been trying to be an architect has been, in a way, the impact of environmentalism. Now you're looking for buildings that capture the sun, absorb the wind, that take the water from the rain or from the heat from the earth and so on, to create a building which is 50% more efficient in energy terms. It's pretty bloody simple.
People should feel good about doing something, whether they're driving a car that's correct, or whether they're recycling, or whether they're seasonally growing their own vegetables, what have you. There's a whole lot of things you can do, and more every day. We should do it and feel good about it. But I don't think we need to post it on a signboard saying, look at me, I'm doing something so unusual, so great. We're just simply doing what we should have done a long time ago. 30, 40 years ago, we could have seen, well, where are we putting all of our energy, all of our financial momentum is going into non-renewable energy sources, oil, coal, gas. And here you have renewable energy sources right over here, right around us. We're not even thinking about it, let alone talking about it. So after 30, 40 years, suddenly we come around because we have to wait for a tipping point where health is being affected and communities are polluted and we don't have the water to drink, we don't have the air to breathe. Oh yeah, okay, now I'll think about it.
We should be careful not to depersonalize the other. Even the person who has committed the most abominable atrocity still remains a child of God.
When I was first elected to Strasbourg, in the European Parliament, I went for a walk. I crossed the bridge in Strasbourg in France to Kiel in Germany, and I stopped and I meditated. I said, there's France, there's Germany. If I'd stood on this bridge 30 years ago at the end of the Second World War, the worst half-century in the history of the world, and if I'd said, don't worry, in 30 years' time, there'll be a united Europe, they would have sent me to a psychiatrist. But it has happened. When you look at conflict, no matter where it exists, what's it about? It's about difference. Difference of race, religion, or nationality. And the answer to difference is to respect it, not to fight about it. Because difference is of the essence of humanity. There's not two human beings who are the same.
Perhaps the most important thing to try and learn is that if you're ever going to get to a solution, if you're ever going to create a peaceful world, you're going to have to ask, what is it possible for the other fellow to do? For your opponent to do? If you're going to stand up and preach at him and say, you've got to do this, you've got to do that, there'll never be an agreement.
One has to understand what the enemy is all about, and that's particularly the enemy's history, the enemy's culture, the enemy's aspirations. If you understand these well, you can perhaps move towards peace.
First of all, when you're the dominant group, you know very little about the subdominant groups. Subdominant groups know a lot about the dominant group, because if you're the dominant, you're in power, things are good. I'm not going to rock the boat. But we always have a few people, even the establishment, who notice and do care and change things over time.
There was an interesting feature about Parliament in my day, in the apartheid regime. The government had the right to prevent the press from publishing in times of emergency, declared emergency. But if the question and answer came from within Parliament, there was no prohibition. So I was used as a conduit, you might say, by the Institute of Race Relations opposing apartheid, to put the questions to which they wanted the answer, and so did I. How many people shot by the police during the riots in Soweto? How many people were being detained without trial? That sort of thing. So you can imagine how many questions I put.
If a politician always does the right thing, regardless of consequences, he won't survive, he or she won't survive long. On the other hand, if they do the popular thing all the time, there's no point in them being there. The first thing in negotiation is to understand where the person negotiating with is coming from. What are their interests, their concerns? Why are they taking up that position? Because unless you understand that, it'll be very hard to get agreement.
You will have to be prepared to compromise on issues to make progress on anything, and that's sometimes very difficult, particularly with some people. You have to know about history, because unless you understand the history of a situation, you can't ever hope to solve the problems.
Don't think we think about that stuff. We think about now, and we think about instant gratification, and that's about it. For the most part, America is not a deep thinking country. We don't look to the past for any clues about our future.
We need the deep thinker, the person that can think ahead and be creative, and especially not looking so much at the pressures to solve the immediate problem, but looking beyond. If we keep looking only at where our feet are going, we may walk off a cliff.
Most times we human beings can be quite silly, getting to make perhaps the same mistakes that were made by previous generations. We learn from history that we don't learn from history.
I sometimes think it may be unwise to have political leaders who don't understand history and haven't grasped their own history sometimes. So I think history is very important, but it is often the obstacle to be overcome. But you must understand the obstacle before you can get rid of it.
I felt when I was in the Army that I had a duty to serve my country, to stand up for the things that I believed we were standing up for. It could be very disillusioning to find that what we were supposedly fighting for in Vietnam wasn't what we were fighting for in Vietnam. I think it was probably that same sense of responsibility that made me come out against the wars.
One of the most interesting new concepts is the responsibility to protect, which does trump sovereignty. If a sovereign does not take care of his or her people, then the international community has a responsibility to protect.
The most important thing, the treasure, to be defended and advocated and followed scrupulously is international human rights law.
Any country has to have at least two categories of objectives. The minimum one is the security of its population. The ultimate one is to realize the aspirations and values of its society. And you can't do one without the other.
If you believe in the law, it applies to everyone. Once you say it doesn't apply to one person or to a group of people, you're really saying, well, I don't believe in the rule of law.
It is absolutely essential that the American democracy refocuses its concerns towards global issues and does not approach its own specific problems on the basis of, to some extent, self-induced fear.
Ultimately, you cannot control people by fear because their ultimate essence is constantly craving dignity. And any creature under fear is an undignified entity. And that the human being has a need for dignity just as like water, like air.
Já myslím, že to vězení mi dalo, nebo mě naučilo vícero věcem. Například jsem si začal lépe uvědomovat, co to je lidská důstojnost a význam lidské důstojnosti. Člověk nemusí být v těch nejhorších podmínkách a může se chovat nedůstojně, ale i v těch nejtěžších podmínkách si může zachovat noblesu a důstojnost. Řekl, že je důležité se nepovyšovat nad ostatní. Prostě jsme tam jeden za politiku, jiný za nějaký kriminální trestný čin a chceme-li tam soužít, tak není zapotřebí, aby jsme si něco lhali vzájemně, ale musíme se brát jako lidské bytosti a nepovyšovat se nad jiné kvůli tomu, že člověk tam je třeba právě z důvodů politických.
Always be on the challenging edge of saying we can do better. And that if you are a social citizen, you are responsible for the condition you find yourself in. Any system you're a part of, you're supporting. So if that system is out of balance, then it's not outside of you out of balance. It's not those people over there. You in some way help that system to be what it is. And you either are talking to that system and saying, this is good, I like this, or this is absolutely insane and it needs to be changed.
I grew up in a family that believed in public service, that there was no greater profession. It inspired my brothers. It's been inspiring me, and I find that each day, I can make some small difference. You don't have to be a United States Senator to make a difference. Nurses make a difference. Policemen make a difference. People work with special needs children make a difference.
I don't know if just political change can affect that much in the world. I think it has to be on a direct personal and emotional level where that we feel a connection with every human being. The change has to be in the heart.
I mean, you think just how many children we would have saved from unnecessary deaths